Mr. James Carter was not an ordinary man. He was the CEO of Carter & Co. Realty, one of the biggest real estate companies in the city. Everyone in the business world knew his name. People respected him. They said he was fair, honest, and successful. He had built the company from nothing. But lately, something didn't feel right. He sat in his big office every day, looking at files, charts, and reports. But numbers weren't the problem anymore. It was people. James had been hearing strange things. One day, while checking emails, he found an anonymous message. "Sir, your staff are not treating clients well. Some workers lie. Others cheat. They disrespect people. Please look into it." At first, James ignored it, but then another message came. And then another. Someone even said money was disappearing from the company accounts. James frowned. He trusted his team. But these messages, they wouldn't stop. He asked the HR manager. She said, "Everything's fine, sir." He asked the branch manager. "No problems here, sir." But deep in his heart, James knew something was wrong. Very wrong. He didn't want to send HR again. He didn't want to scare people by making it a big case. Instead, he made a bold decision. Something no CEO had done before. He would go undercover as a janitor. His assistant, Maria, was shocked when he told her. "You? As a janitor?" she said. James smiled. "Yes, I want to see the truth, not the polished version they show me." "But what if someone finds out?" "They won't," James replied calmly. "I'll wear old clothes, a cap. No one will recognize me." Maria hesitated, then nodded. "I'll help you." The next day, James Carter disappeared. No press meetings, no emails, no office. To the world, he was on vacation. But in reality, he was sweeping floors in one of his own buildings. He wore torn jeans, an old gray hoodie, and a cleaning badge with the name Jimmy. He looked in the mirror and laughed a little. "From CEO to janitor," he said to himself. "Let's do this." The office building was busy when he arrived. Employees walked past him without even looking. No one greeted him. James had been used to hearing "Good morning, sir," wherever he went. But today, he was invisible. He picked up a mop and started cleaning the floor near the entrance. That's when he noticed the first red flag. A young lady, probably a client, stood at the reception. She looked confused. The receptionist, a tall man in a fancy suit, was on the phone, laughing loudly. The girl waited and waited. After 5 minutes, she finally asked, "Excuse me, sir, can someone help me?" The receptionist rolled his eyes. "Can't you see I'm busy?" James watched silently, gripping the mop tighter. The girl walked away, disappointed. In the hallway, James heard 2 employees talking. "Did you fake that deal again?" "Yeah, easy money. I just used the same house pictures from last year." They laughed, loudly. James felt anger rising in his chest, but he said nothing. Not yet. He needed more proof. Later that day, he saw a junior staff member being scolded in front of everyone. "You're too slow," a manager yelled. "You'll never make it in this company." The boy looked down, ashamed. James looked around. No one stood up for him. Not even a word of support. That hurt more than anything. But not everyone was cruel. He met an older lady named Rosa, another janitor. She had kind eyes and a gentle smile. "You're new here?" she asked. James nodded. "Yes, just joined." "Be careful," she whispered. "Some people here, they don't care about others." James nodded again. "Thank you." He would remember her words. By the end of the day, James was exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. He had only been there for 1 day. And already he had seen enough to know something was deeply broken. As he left the building that night, James sat on a bench outside. He looked up at the company's logo on the tall building. His name was on that sign. But what was happening inside? That wasn't the company he had built. He pulled out a small notebook from his pocket. On the first page, he wrote, "It was James Carter's third day as Jimmy, the janitor." But this time, he didn't just want to observe the bad people. He wanted to see the good ones, those who stayed kind, even when no one noticed. As he walked into the building that morning, he felt something different. He was no longer just watching. He was starting to care. While cleaning the hallway, he passed by a small office room near the back. The door was half open. Inside, a woman sat at her desk, rubbing her temples. Her eyes looked tired, but her fingers kept typing. Her name tag said, "Sarah, Admin Department." James had seen her before, always working quietly, always the last one to leave. Suddenly, she received a phone call. She answered in a soft voice. "Hi, sweetie. Yes, Mommy will be home soon. I know. Yes, I'll bring your medicine. I love you." She hung up quickly, wiped her eyes, and returned to work. James stood at the door for a second. Then, quietly, he knocked. Sarah looked up. "Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there." James smiled gently. "Didn't mean to bother you. Just cleaning the hallway." She smiled back. "It's all right. Thanks for keeping the place clean." No one had ever thanked him like that since he started this disguise. It meant something. Later that day, James saw Sarah again. She was carrying a broken chair, struggling to take it to the storage room. He rushed to help. "Let me take that," he said. "Thank you, Jimmy," she said, surprised. "You're very kind." As they walked, they talked. Sarah told him she had a 6-year-old daughter named Mia. She was a single mom. Her husband had left them 2 years ago. Now she worked full-time, took care of her daughter, and still made time to help her sick neighbor, all while earning one of the lowest salaries in the company. James listened carefully. She never complains, he thought, and still gives so much. He felt a lump in his throat. This woman deserved so much more. Later in the afternoon, James entered the break room. There, sitting in a corner with a sandwich and a notebook, was David, the quiet intern. No one else talked to him. He looked shy and unsure. James sat at the next table and smiled. "Hey, David, right?" David looked surprised. Yeah. "I've seen you working hard," James said. "You don't take breaks often." David looked down. "I just don't want to mess anything up. I need this internship to help my mom." James raised his eyebrows. David continued, "She's in the hospital. I'm trying to save up for her medicine. That's why I stay late. But my manager doesn't really notice." James felt his chest tighten again. So many people were hurting quietly in this building, and no one at the top even knew. Just as James was about to leave the break room, he heard a voice from the doorway. "Oh, look, the janitor making friends with the loser." It was Paul, the senior sales guy, holding a drink and smirking. David looked down, embarrassed. James stood up slowly, keeping his cool. Paul laughed again. "Careful, Jimmy. You hang out with losers too long, you'll turn into one." James smiled, not out of happiness, but control. "Maybe I'd rather be with the kind ones than the loud ones," he said calmly. Paul frowned and walked away. David looked up. "Thanks. People usually don't say anything." James patted his shoulder. "Keep doing your best. That matters." Before the day ended, James went to the rooftop alone. He looked out at the city. So many buildings, so many people. But inside this building, 2 stories stood out in his mind. Sarah, the single mother with a quiet strength. David, the young boy with big dreams and a soft heart. They were invisible to the rest of the company, but not to him. Not anymore. After the storm came silence. The day after James revealed the truth, the company building felt different. The air was lighter. The fear was gone. No more angry shouting. No more fake smiles. For the first time in many months, people walked into work without a heavy heart. And at the center of it all was James Carter. Not Jimmy the janitor anymore. Now he was James the leader, and he had a mission. That morning, James held a private meeting with his trusted team. Inside the room were only a few people: Sarah, David, Kevin from it, Rosa the cleaning lady, and two honest managers who had stayed silent for too long. James looked at each of them and smiled. "You all saw the truth," he said gently. "You all stood by what was right. Now I need your help to rebuild this company." They looked surprised. "Us?" David asked. James nodded. "Yes. You." He pointed at Kevin. "You kept quiet but used your skills for something good. I want you to head our cybersecurity department." Kevin's mouth dropped. "Me? Head the department?" "Yes," James said. "I trust you." Then he turned to Sarah. "You have been loyal, hardworking, honest. From today, you are the new assistant director of operations." Sarah covered her mouth. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," James smiled. "You earned it." Then he looked at Rosa. "You are not just a cleaning lady. You are the soul of this place. You cared when nobody else did. I want you to be in charge of staff welfare. I want everyone to feel seen, like you made me feel." Rosa wiped her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. I will do my best." The company didn't just get new leaders. It got a new heart. James created a new rule. Every voice matters. He started a listening hour where employees could speak to him directly. He invited feedback, ideas, and even complaints. He changed hiring rules to give more chances to single parents, young dreamers, and honest workers. And slowly, things began to change. David, once a shy intern, began leading small meetings. He spoke with confidence. His ideas were creative, and people listened. Sarah helped fix client issues from months ago. She made sure refunds were sent, apologies were written, calls were returned. One client cried on the phone. "No one ever cared before," she said. "Thank you." Kevin caught a security issue and stopped a fake contract from going live. He smiled for the first time in a long time. "I finally feel like I belong here," he told James. But James didn't stop. He visited every department, shook hands, looked people in the eye. He remembered names, asked about families, and he said something powerful to each one. "You matter. You are not just a number here." The workers smiled more. They stayed late, not because they were scared, but because they wanted to. 1 week later, James held a company-wide town hall. He stood on stage, microphone in hand. "I made mistakes," he said honestly. "I became too distant. I forgot to listen." He looked at the crowd. "But this company is yours as much as it is mine. Together, we fix it. Together, we grow." He raised his hand. And this time, no masks, no lies, just truth. The crowd clapped loud and long. Some stood up, some cried. But one thing was clear: they believed again. Later that day, as James walked through the office, he saw something that stopped him. 2 employees were laughing together in the break room. One of them said, "Man, I actually like coming to work now." James didn't say anything. He just smiled. Because that one sentence meant more to him than any award, any profit, any deal. He had built something real again. That night, James sat at his office desk, watching the city lights. He opened his notebook and wrote, "A company is not just desks and dollars. It's people. It's dreams. It's hope." He leaned back and thought about everything that happened. The lies. The pain. The moment he walked in with a mop and walked out with the truth. He whispered. The next morning, James Carter, still dressed as the janitor Jimmy, arrived at the building before sunrise. The halls were quiet, but the weight in his heart was heavy. He wasn't just cleaning floors. He was uncovering truth. And today, that truth hit harder than ever. As the morning light filled the office, employees started arriving. Some came in early, focused and quiet. Others strolled in late, laughing loudly, holding coffee and bragging about their weekend. James quietly swept the lobby floor. But his eyes, they were sharp. He was watching everything. Around 9 a.m., he moved into the main hallway and saw a scene that made him stop. A young woman, barely in her 20s, stood beside the printer with a stack of papers. Her name tag said Lily, sales assistant. She was trying to carry files and cups of coffee at the same time. A man in a suit walked by and accidentally bumped into her, making everything fall. Papers scattered. Coffee spilled. Lily gasped. The man just laughed. "Be useful next time," he said and walked away. James bent down and helped her pick up the papers. Lily gave a weak smile. "Thanks. They don't really respect junior staff here." James said nothing, but inside, he was burning. Later that day, James saw something worse. In the break room, a group of employees were joking loudly. One of them, Paul, was a senior sales executive. James watched as Paul opened his laptop and showed a fake listing to his friends. "Look at this," Paul whispered, grinning. "Old house, new pictures, fake price. Client thinks it's a new property." They all laughed. Someone asked, "Does the boss know?" Paul replied, "The old man. Nah, he just signs the checks." James gripped the mop tighter. The old man was standing right there. Just before lunch, James walked past the manager's office. The door was slightly open. Inside, Mr. Blake, the branch manager, was yelling at someone. "I don't care how you do it, just close the deal," he shouted. "Promise them anything. We'll deal with the truth later." Then Blake threw a file on the table. James paused. He had heard enough. He wrote the words in his notebook. "Fake promises. Pressure on staff. Blake is dangerous." Later in the hallway, he saw something that made him smile. Two workers were carrying boxes. One dropped a small box, and without thinking, David, the quiet intern, ran forward to help. Nobody noticed it, but James did. Kindness still existed here. He walked past David and whispered, "Good job." David looked surprised. "Thanks, Jimmy." James gave him a thumbs up and walked on. That afternoon, James mopped near the reception area. The same rude receptionist from yesterday, Connor, was back at it again. This time, he was laughing on the phone while a pregnant woman waited nearby. She looked tired, nervous, and in pain. Finally, she asked, "Can someone help me, please?" Connor rolled his eyes. "Do you have an appointment?" "Yes. No appointment, no help." James couldn't stay silent this time. He walked up, gently helped the woman sit on a chair, and brought her a glass of water from the cooler. She smiled and said softly, "Thank you. You're the only one who saw me today." James nodded. "You're welcome, Mom." Connor looked annoyed. "Hey, janitor, stay in your lane." James didn't respond, but he looked Connor straight in the eyes, and in that moment, Connor looked uneasy, as if the janitor had seen something deeper, and he had. By the end of the day, James sat on a bench outside the back entrance, just like yesterday. Rosa, the older janitor, joined him with 2 cups of tea. "Rough day?" she asked kindly. James nodded. "Very." She smiled. "Don't worry. The truth always comes out." James looked at her and said softly, "Sometimes the truth needs a little help." Rosa looked at him, surprised by his calm strength. But she didn't ask questions. Instead, she sipped her tea and whispered, "You're different, Jimmy. You see things others don't." James smiled. "Maybe I've been looking in the wrong direction for too long." David blinked in surprise. "Thanks, Jimmy." James paused. "One day, You'll be a great leader. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." David's eyes filled with emotion. He had never heard those words before. By noon, the conference room was full. All employees were seated, junior, senior, even Blake and Paul. James stood quietly in the corner, holding a mop. Nobody paid attention to him, just the janitor. But under the table, his hidden voice recorder was running. Then Blake stood up and began the meeting. "Let's talk numbers," he said proudly. "This quarter has been profitable." James rolled his eyes. He knew the numbers were built on lies. Blake kept speaking, promising bonuses, ignoring complaints, blaming lazy staff. Paul jumped in next, making jokes and mocking clients again. They were relaxed, confident, careless, exactly how James wanted them. After the meeting ended, James slipped out quietly. Back in the janitor's room, he saved the audio. Now he had proof in sound and video. He stared at the laptop screen and took a deep breath. Tomorrow, he would walk into this building not as Jimmy the janitor, but as James Carter, the CEO. And when he did, everything would change. That night, James made one final note in his notebook. Tomorrow, they find out the truth. No more lies, no more silence. Justice begins. He closed the notebook, looked in the mirror, and said softly, "You started this company with love. Now it's time to protect it with fire." The sun rose slowly over the city, but inside James Carter's heart, a storm was already building. Today was the day. He had played the part of a quiet janitor for 2 weeks. He had seen lies, pain, and kindness hidden behind office doors. He had collected proof. He had watched. Now he was ready to speak. James stood in front of the mirror in his small rented room. He wore a clean blue suit. His hair was neat, his shoes polished. He didn't look like Jimmy the janitor anymore. He looked like the real James Carter, the founder and CEO of one of the biggest real estate companies in the country. He took one deep breath and whispered, "Time to clean the company for real." At exactly 9:00 a.m., James walked into the company building. No mop, no janitor's cart, just a leather briefcase and a fire in his eyes. The receptionist looked up and froze. "Jimmy." He smiled calmly. "It's James. James Carter." The receptionist gasped. Her eyes widened. She had seen his photo before, in the newspapers, in company magazines, but never expected to see him in person. I didn't know," she whispered. James nodded kindly. "You've always been polite to me. Thank you." Then he walked to the elevator. Inside the conference room, Blake was preparing for another team meeting. Paul was drinking coffee, cracking jokes. The room slowly filled with employees. Sarah was there, tired but focused. David sat quietly with his notebook. Everyone was there, except the CEO they all thought they knew. Then the door opened, and James Carter walked in. Everyone turned. Silence hit the room like a heavy stone. Paul dropped his coffee. Blake stood up, confused. "Who are?" James raised a hand. "No questions," he said calmly. "Just listen." He walked to the front of the room and opened his briefcase. Inside was his notebook and a flash drive. He connected the drive to the projector. A slideshow began. Photos appeared on the screen. Paul laughing at clients, fake contracts, angry complaint emails ignored by management. Then, a video. Paul tricking a client, Blake yelling on the phone, even audio of the last meeting. People gasped. Some covered their mouths. Others looked down, ashamed. James stood tall. "I've been working here as your janitor," he said softly. "Watching, listening, recording." Sarah looked shocked. David couldn't believe it. James continued, "I built this company from nothing, with honesty, with love, but it has become a place of fear, lies, and greed." He turned to face Blake and Paul. "You two, I've betrayed everything this company stands for. Paul tried to speak. This is a misunderstanding. James cut him off. I heard you mock clients. I saw you forge documents. I watched you break young interns with your bullying. Then he turned to Blake. And you let it happen. You covered it up. You approved fake deals. You stole from innocent people. Blake's face turned red. Do you have proof? James smiled. The whole building is wired. Cameras. Mics. Every lie you told. I have it. Gasps echoed through the room. Then James paused and looked at Sarah. Sarah, you worked hard, never complained, helped others even when you were tired. You deserve to be seen. Sarah blinked fast, trying not to cry. He looked at David. You stayed late. You were kind. You worked silently. You remind me of how I started. David's mouth dropped open. James then looked at Rosa, the cleaning lady. You, Rosa, have more dignity and strength than most managers I've seen. You treated me like a human. Tears filled Rosa's eyes. James turned back to the room. This company is not made of buildings. It's made of people like them. And I'm here to clean it, just like I cleaned your floors. Security guards entered the room. James pointed at Paul and Blake. Escort them out. They are officially fired. Legal will handle the rest. Paul screamed. This is illegal. Blake yelled. You can't do this. James turned sharply. I can. I'm the CEO. And just like that, the guards took them away. Silence returned. Then James looked around the room. I know some of you are scared. I know some of you stayed quiet because you needed this job. I don't blame you. He took a deep breath. But from today, everything changes. This company will now be a place of fairness, honesty, and respect. The room slowly filled with claps. It started small, from David, then Sarah, then others. Soon, everyone was clapping. Some even cried. James smiled. For the first time, in a long time, he felt proud. Not because of the money, not because of the power, but because he had stood up for the good ones. That night, James sat in his real office, the same desk where Blake once shouted on phone calls. Now it was quiet, peaceful. He opened his notebook and wrote the final line. Sometimes, to see the truth, you have to walk in different shoes. He looked out the window and whispered. 1 month had passed since James Carter took back control of his company. But to James, it felt like a lifetime had passed. So much had changed. The halls were brighter. The people were happier. And the company, it was healing, day by day. James stood by the large glass window in his office, sipping tea instead of coffee. He had stopped rushing. He had started listening. The city below was alive, busy, just like his heart. He smiled to himself, thinking, this company has a second chance, and so do I. That morning, James received a letter on his desk. It wasn't typed. It was handwritten. He opened it gently. The first line made him pause. Dear Mr. Carter, I want to thank you. You changed my life. It was from Rosa, the cleaning lady who once worked in silence. She had used her new position to help other employees who felt unseen. She organized lunch breaks, birthday cards, and mental health support. In her letter, she wrote, You saw me when no one else did. Now, I help others feel seen too. James held the letter to his chest and closed his eyes. This was the reason he became a CEO. Not for power, not for money, but for people. That day, James called for a small celebration in the office garden. No suits, no fancy speeches, just real people, real smiles, and food from local vendors. Sarah laughed as she helped set up chairs. David brought flowers. Kevin made a funny slideshow of their journey from chaos to kindness. Even James helped carry water bottles. Hey, someone joked, he still knows how to work like a janitor. Everyone laughed, including James. When it was time to speak, James stood under a small tree, holding a simple mic. He looked at everyone. Smiling faces, honest eyes. He didn't see employees. He saw family. James took a breath and began. 1 month ago, I walked into this building with a mop. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to see the truth. And what I saw broke my heart. But what I found healed it. He paused. I found kindness in a cleaning lady, strength in an intern, hope in a tired voice, and courage in those who stayed silent, yet stayed true. He looked around and continued. We made mistakes. We let bad people rise. But now we rise together. No masks, no lies, just people, real people, trying their best. James smiled as the wind gently moved the leaves above him. Some say a CEO is the head of the company. I say, the heart is more important. And all of you are the heart. The crowd clapped. Some wiped tears. Others simply nodded, deeply moved. After the speech, people came up to James, one by one. A shy intern said, "You made me believe that honesty matters." An older employee whispered, "You reminded me why I joined this company 20 years ago." Even the receptionist, who once called him Jimmy, gave him a tight hug. "You're not just our boss," she said. "You're one of us." James smiled. That's all I ever wanted to be. Later that night, the office lights turned off one by one. But James stayed behind, alone. He walked down the quiet hallway and stopped at the janitor's closet. He opened the door slowly. Inside was the mop he once pushed, the uniform he once wore. He stepped inside, touched the old name tag, Jimmy. He smiled and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me how to lead." As he left the building, he looked up at the stars. No cameras, no applause, just silence and peace. He took out his notebook, the same one he carried during his undercover days, and wrote, "You don't need a title to be a leader. You just need to care." Then he turned the page and wrote the final words. The end is just another beginning. The next morning, James Carter didn't wear his usual fake smile. He walked into the company building as Jimmy, the janitor. But this time, his eyes were sharp, focused. He had seen too much. Good people were being ignored. Bad people were in charge. And now, it was time to do something. Before sunrise, James quietly entered the conference room. In his hand, he carried a small black device, a voice recorder. He had hidden cameras already placed in 3 rooms. Now he was adding sound. He slid the recorder under the large table and made sure it was hidden. Then he cleaned the room like nothing happened. Nobody noticed. That afternoon, there would be a team meeting, and James planned to record everything. Back in the hallway, James passed by Paul, the senior sales guy. Paul was bragging again, this time about a client he tricked into signing a fake deal. "She thinks she's buying a 2-bedroom apartment with sea view," Paul laughed, showing photos on his phone. "It's actually a 1-room place near the highway." His friends laughed with him. James kept walking, pretending not to hear, but every word went into his hidden mic in the janitor cart. Paul had no idea he was digging his own grave. Later that day, James visited the IT department under the excuse of cleaning. There, he met a quiet guy named Kevin, who worked with company systems. James had spoken to Kevin before, just a short conversation, but he remembered something important. Kevin hated corruption. So James took a chance. "Kevin," he whispered while wiping the desk, "if someone wanted to copy files from the manager's computer without him knowing, could that be done?" Kevin looked shocked. "Why?" James leaned closer. "Because someone needs to stop what's happening in this company." Kevin stared at him for a long time, then slowly nodded. "I can give you a flash drive," he whispered. "It copies everything. Just plug it in." James smiled. Thank you. That small flash drive was going to be a game changer. At lunchtime, James walked past the manager's office. Mr. Blake was yelling at someone on the phone again. No refunds. I don't care what they were promised. James took a deep breath and walked in, pushing his mock cart. Sorry, sir, cleaning service, he said. Blake waved him in, annoyed. As Blake turned back to his call, James moved behind the desk and plugged in the flash drive. It blinked blue. Data started downloading. Emails, contracts, files, all of Blake's dirty secrets. It took just 2 minutes. James unplugged it, thanked Blake, and walked out. He had what he needed. That evening, a storm rolled in. Thunder shook the windows. James sat in the janitor's room, staring at the laptop. The files Kevin helped him download told the full story. Fake listings created by Paul. Approval emails from Blake. Complaints ignored from innocent clients. Staff warnings deleted. Fake names on contracts. It was all there. James leaned back in his chair and whispered, "Got you." But he didn't smile. His heart was heavy. Because this wasn't just about firing a few bad people. It was about saving the soul of his company. The next morning, James arrived even earlier. He visited Sarah at her desk and handed her a warm coffee. "You always look so tired," he said kindly. She smiled. "Single mom life." James nodded. "You're doing great." He left her confused, but happy. Then he went to David, the intern. "You're doing amazing," James said. "Just wanted you to know."